Right, the idea of this is a random country's going to come up. I'm going to name you the greatest fighter to ever come from that country, in my opinion, and give you a bit of insight. Spain, wouldn't be able to say the greatest Spanish boxer of all time, but Kiko Martinez was doing bits in recent years. I always think about that great knockout against Kid Galahad with Kiko Martinez. Sweden, Ingemar Johansson, that's going to be the man, Sweden's only heavyweight champion in history. The man who knocked out Floyd Patterson, absolutely destroyed Patterson, dropped him, I think, 7 times in their first fight. Lost the rematch when Patterson became the only man at the time to regain the heavyweight championship. The only one I can think about in recent years who's done bits of heavyweight from Sweden is Otto Wallin. Cuba, this one depends because Cuba weren't allowed to box professionally for years, so they had some amazing amateurs. As an amateur, it would either be Teofilo Stevenson or Felix Savon, 2 3-time Olympic gold medalists and never turned pro. Stevenson in the 70s when Ali and co were dominating the pro scene, and Savon in the 90s when there were likes of Tyson. As a professional, the greatest Cuban professional I would say would be Kid Gavilan, 1940s welterweight champion. Really tough. His fight with Gil Turner was one of the most brutal fights I've ever seen, and boxed the likes of Sugar Ray Robinson and Carmen Basilio. Gavilan was never stopped in about 140 odd pro fights. Uruguay, I think there was a fighter from Uruguay called Alfredo Evangelista who boxed Larry Holmes at heavyweight. I'll have to double check that one. Evangelista was Uruguayan in the 80s. Italy, that would be Nino Benvenuti, 1960s middleweight champion of the world. He went about 70 fights unbeaten as a pro, something as an amateur, something like that, and then won his first 60 pro fights. Multiple time middleweight champion as far as I'm aware. Had a saga of fights against the great Emil Griffith. Boxed Carlos Monzon twice. Really, really good fighter. Yeah, when he went 60-0 as a pro, his combined record was something like 130-0. China. The greatest Chinese amateur was Zhu Shiming. And he did turn pro about 10 years ago and won a world title, but he fell short as a pro. I'm going to put it out there and say Zhilei Zhang is the greatest Chinese professional boxer of all time. They haven't had that many. He's obviously knocked out Deontay Wilder, Joe Joyce, fought Philip Hergovich and Joseph Parker, and as of this recording, is fighting Ajit Kabayel this weekend. I'm a massive Zhang fan. Also an Olympic medalist as well, I forgot to mention. That's Uganda. And Uganda would be John Mugabe. John Mugabe was a massive puncher, gave Marvin Hagler probably his hardest ever fight. I know the Tommy Hearns fight was hard, but it was only 3 rounds. Mugabe stuck about and he was a murderous puncher. I would say John Mugabe. That Hagler fight took it out of Mugabe, but oh, what a fight. Russia, you've got a few. You've got Artur Beterbiev, who is the current undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world. Dmitry Bivol, who as of next week may be the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world. I don't think either of them were as accomplished yet as Kostya Tszyu. Kostya Tszyu, the light welterweight champion of the 1990s. He was an absolute monster. I know he had Australian citizenship, but he was born in Russia. He boxed for Russia as an amateur. He was just one of my favourite fighters. I love Kostya Tszyu. Great style. South Korea. You've got Duk Koo Kim, who wasn't the greatest, but it's an interesting story because he passed away after his fight with Ray Mancini, which was one of the instigators to stop 15-round fights. But in my opinion, it would probably be Injin Chi. He had such a great fight against a British fighter whose name evades me now. But he also had a great fight against Eric Morales. Great fighter in the smaller weight divisions. Probably the greatest South Korean fighter that springs to mind right now. Very aggressive fighter, Injin Chi. He was a beast. United States of America. Ooh, well, I think there are 5 possible standouts in my head. You could say Ezzard Charles. Ezzard Charles was someone that dominated from middleweight to light heavyweight to heavyweight for about a decade. Very underrated fighter. Henry Armstrong could be up there. Whoa, man, just an absolute beast. Dominated the equivalent of 7 divisions today within a span of 4 years. In that streak, he went 59-1 with 51 knockouts. Beat like 12 Hall of Famers. You've got Muhammad Ali. Dominated 2 of the greatest heavyweight eras in history. Joe Lewis, 11 and a half years a champion. Harry Greb, 300 fights, 18 defeats, 45-0 in 1 year. 16 different Hall of Famers. But there's one standout to me, and it's Sugar Ray Robinson, who was only ever stopped once in 200 pro fights. Yeah, 91-0 as a welterweight, 120 odd and 130 and 1 at one point in his career, and then became a 5-time middleweight champion. He could punch, he could box. He was only ever stopped that one time due to heat exhaustion. Yeah, he was an absolute beast. It's very rare that the greatest of all time is sort of agreed upon universally in any sport, but Robinson is kind of universally agreed upon as the greatest boxer to ever live. Japan. For a long time, it was fighting Harada, the man who beat Ada Joffrey. However, now, I think Naoya Inoue has surpassed him. He never beat anyone of Joffrey's level. You know, Joffrey's one of the greatest fighters to ever live. But he's dominated the equivalent of 5 divisions for 11 years now. A 4-division champion because he skipped flyweight. Yeah, Inoue's a monster. 24 world title fights with 21 knockouts already. Yeah, amazing fighter. Currently, my favourite fighter in the world right now. I just think he's brilliant. Poland. Poland, in my opinion, would be someone. I think he claimed German citizenship, but it's Dariusz Michalczewski, who went something like 46-0 at the light heavyweight division, was a champion there the same time Roy Jones was a champion. He beat Virgil Hill, that was one of his standouts. Very good fighter, boxed out of Germany all the time, but a very solid fighter. Right, moving on to the next one. We have got the United Kingdom. Whew, Great Britain. There's so many. Recent times, Joe Calzaghe and Lennox Lewis would be standouts. I always thought Carl Froch was really underrated. Ben and Eubank, Prince Nassim. But I wouldn't put any of them all time. Scotland had Ken Buchanan, who never gets mentioned. Fantastic lightweight, an absolute beast. Back in the days, you had Ted Kid Lewis, who had hundreds of fights. Bob Fitzsimmons, who was middleweight, light heavyweight and heavyweight champion about 100 years before Roy Jones did it. Great puncher, but for me, it would be Jimmy Wilde, the Welsh flyweight, the first flyweight champion in history. He went 93-0. He scored 99 knockouts in his entire career, 3 losses in about 130 fights. Yeah, there's footage of him as well, and he was fast. Used to knock out everyone from flyweight to featherweight. Yeah, he was an absolute beast. Right, and that's going to do for this video. I'll see what comes up here, already covered. Thank you very much. Those are the greatest fighters off the top of my head from random countries that come up.